If you are a new business owner, you landed in exactly the right spot. What if I told you by doing this one thing in your business will increase the likelihood of you achieving the very thing that you launched your business for by 42%, just by doing this one thing? Well, my name is Chris Ward. I'm the host of Five Pillar Legacy. I've been an entrepreneur for almost 2 decades now. Well, 18 years to be exact. And so today we're going to unpack the one mistake that myself and so many of us entrepreneurs make when launching and growing a business. Well, the first mistake is not having a written plan. Not having a written plan. We're going to unpack that. Let's start with this, that 83% of the general population has absolutely no goals whatsoever. No goals. And then 14 out of 100 do have goals. However, only 3%, 3 out of 100 people take the time to put the pen to the paper to write out some desired intentions, some goals, a written plan in their business. Only 3% of the population. So right out of the gate, let's talk about why this is so important. Well, I want to flip around and show you my notes on this one. I didn't need a bunch of lines or notes or anything. I took a photo of a hamster because I'll tell you what, when I launched my real estate business back in 2007, you talk about being on the hamster wheel. This is what I mean by the hamster wheel. By the way, as I describe what it feels like to be on a hamster wheel, if you could relate, drop in the comments hamster, and I'll know what you mean by that. So here's what I mean by being on a hamster wheel. It's this feeling of like, I always have to be on, meaning that I always have to be working, that I always need more appointments. I need to be talking to more people. I need to be on my phone more. I need more leads. I need more of all of these things to where, man, I'll tell you what, I just feel exhausted and worn out, even begin to describe it as I reminisce. And just imagine the hamster wheel just being constant and never ending running. Always saying, I'm busy, I'm so busy, I'm too busy. And saying that I'm busy as a reason of it, all in the name of like, I desire to grow my business, thinking that that's what I have to do in order to grow my business as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. Well, here's what I know now, that here's how we get off the hamster wheel, by the way. Here's the 3 things that we're going to unpack. I wrote this out because the purpose of a business plan is this. We're going to have a proactive, purposeful approach that produces profits. I'm going to say all that again. Having a written plan is about having a proactive, purposeful approach that produces profits. So part of the way that we get off the hamster wheel is by having a written plan. The next thing I wrote down that I desire to share with you is that the reason we have a written plan is because we think about the desired outcomes. I'm a big fan. I'll give you an example of what I mean by written plan. Here's what I don't mean. I don't mean that your written plan is a stack of paperwork that's overwhelming and complicated and confusing. That's not what I'm talking about. File that to the side. However, what I do mean by a written plan is by focusing on the inputs that will produce the outputs. For example, I'll give you my strategy content, my YouTube podcast strategy content for this year. It's only one thing as an example. It's this: one long format video once a week that I release every week this year on Tuesdays. You see how uncomplicated that is? It's so simple. So back to there's a verse, where there is no vision, the people perish. Where there is no vision, the people perish. Now, I used to tie this in with like John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever should believe in him will not perish, but have eternal life. And so I used to think the word here in the Old Testament, perish, means like drop over, fall down dead. Well, that is simply not the case, because there's plenty of times in my life, especially in launching my business, where I did not have a written plan. I didn't have any vision for my business. So what does this verse mean? It means where there's no compelling image of someday in the future, I'm undisciplined, and how I use my time, my energy, and effort, none of that really matters because there's nowhere I'm desiring to be. I desire to be. Therefore, what I do with my time really doesn't matter. So, for example, this week, if there's no direction that I have, no vision for this week, then it really doesn't matter how I take care of myself, if I go to the gym or not, or if I sleep in or not. None of that really matters. But when I have a clear vision that I desire to have, everything matters now. The next thing is, one of the things that's helpful is to think about, especially in launching a business, because sometimes like there's so much stuff out there where have 10-year goals, 5-year goals. All of that is great, and there's a time and place for that. But I'll tell you what's mission critical: knowing how you win in your business just over this next 12 months. How do you measure winning in your business over the next 12 months? Because here's what happens if you don't have clear metrics on how you're winning. You'll be like I was when I launched my business. You'll be once again back on that hamster wheel, where the days that you take off, if any, you find yourself not being present with your family because in your mind you're thinking, "Oh, I should have done more. I should have gone on more appointments. I should have made more phone calls. I should have done more of these things." And yet I could put my mind at ease, meaning I've earned the right to have time off when I'm on track for my desired outcomes this year. I want to break down this proactive and purposeful approach that produces profits. Proactive. What do I mean by that? Well, I think of Stephen Covey's book, First Things First, where I believe it's chapter 1, where it talks about being proactive. What does that mean? It means not being reactive. Being proactive means I think in advance about the things that need to happen in order to achieve the outcome that I desire, that I have the vision for. So one of the benefits of having a written, simple plan is that we're being proactive, because we all know it as a business owner that when the sun comes up and we grab our cell phones and it's go time in our business, the world's reaching out to us. All of the problems and challenges that we solve in the marketplace and for others seem to come towards us. And yet we want to have a proactive approach in our business. And we do that by having a business plan. The other part of this is being purposeful. We get to decide in advance about the actions, the inputs that lead to the outputs. We're purposeful, meaning we put some thought into that. We have a purposeful approach, meaning that we have intentions for the day. Just like I mentioned, releasing the one long video format once a week, that I have to be purposeful in order to make that happen. Because if I just try to squeeze it in the midst of everything else going on with family and business and all of the things, it's not going to happen. And if it's not a priority, I'm not treating it like a priority if I'm trying to squeeze it in there. So being proactive and having a purposeful approach, and that ultimately produces profit. One of the purposes of business is profit, meaning revenue. All of us, no matter how much money we have, could only go a certain period of time without income flowing into our world, right? And how do we measure serving others? How do I know that I'm serving people and adding value to them? Well, it's because there's revenue flowing into my world as a result of being of service and solving big problems for a bunch of people, a big group of people. So we have a purposeful and proactive approach that ultimately produces profits. I want to end with this today, that it's mission critical that we have a clear plan to achieve our goal. How do we do that? It's by having a written business plan. Type in written business plan. So out of 18 years of being an entrepreneur, I narrowed down the top 5 things that I've learned, mostly the hard way by not knowing what I don't know, which is where we all start in learning, right? It's the unconscious incompetence where we all start. And I've narrowed down out of the list of all the things, all of the mistakes that us entrepreneurs tend to make, I narrowed down the top 5. And today I share with you the number 1 out of 5. And yet I want to let you know the other 4, when you lean into those, just like you did today, they're going to save you so much time, money, and heartache. You can learn from me and my experience and it will, I promise you, you will be glad that you did. So hit subscribe so you can tune in again next week when I drop part 2 of this. And I promise you that you'll be glad that you did. And I appreciate you hanging in there. Thank you so much. And we'll see you next week. Bye for now.